Hey guys, it's James from the Lore Masters, and we're back again with another new deck profile for you. And this time we're playing Steel Sapphire Ramp. Now, what does this deck do? You're using the blue cards in this deck, like a jump ahead, and also the Mickey Mouse Detective to ramp up your ink nice and early. And then you're playing big threats, both blue and steel, to power over your opponent. But there's also a lot of small board-wide damage you can play in this deck as well. So if your opponent is playing lots of small kind of characters, you can get rid of them with those. But if they are just playing big characters, we've got answers for them too. So you can kind of see the deck on your screen at the moment. So now let's swap over to the list view so we can kind of see what we're dealing with. Okay, so you can kind of see it on your screen now. So it plays 36 characters, 8 action cards, 12 songs, and 4 items. So we're going to go through it one by one, and I'll explain why things are played, and etc, etc. So we'll go up with the characters first. So we'll go with Aurora, Dreaming Guardian. So she's a 5-drop with shift 3. You can pay 3 ink to play this on top of one of your characters named Aurora. So we do play the 2-drop Aurora in this deck. So we can play this as early as turn 3. Which is very handy because we do play 8 songs in this deck that need a 5-cost character. But her ability is Protective Embrace. Your other characters gain Ward. Your opponent cannot choose them except to challenge them. It doesn't protect herself, but if you do have another of this on the board, they do protect each other. So that's always worth bearing in mind that if you do control 2, your whole board is protected from anything that kind of targets you. Okay, the next thing is Robin Hood, Unrivaled Archer. So it has the ability, when you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their hand than you, draw a card, and during your turn this character gains Evasive. So this is useful because you're spending a lot of your cards to ramp your ink up so your hand gets pretty low pretty quickly. So when it comes in, chances are you're going to have less cards than your opponent, so you draw a card when it comes in, but it also answers the more annoying evasive cards that your opponent may be playing. So things like Genie, things like Goofy, even things like Tigger, it answers them all. It doesn't really matter if this card does get bounced with Genie because you can replay it and draw a card, and then you can able to kind of kill the Genie the next turn if your opponent does decide to quest with it. But yeah, it's worth playing, it's a good card. Okay, the next thing is Scar Mastermind. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gets -5 attack this turn. So the reason why we're playing this card is since Tinkerbell and Grab Your Sword got revealed, the meta has swung very much in the favour of everyone using big creatures instead of small. So the strategy used to be play lots and lots of small characters, fill up your board, quest for lots, etc, etc. But because there's lots of board-wide damage now in existence, opponents are going for bigger characters. So the reason why Scar is in here, so you can play it, make your opponent's exerted big character basically 0 attack, and then attack over it, you get to keep your character, they lose theirs, as well as you developing your board with the Scar. So it is worth playing because we are, like I say, playing a meta of big characters. Okay, the next thing is Tinkerbell, Tiny Tactician. So it's a 3-drop. You can exert her, draw a card, and then choose and discard a card. She's mainly in here because she fits the right colours, and you can get to shift into her into the big giant Tinkerbell on turn 4. But sometimes her ability is useful for ditching the extra ramp cards that we don't need because they are all uninkable. So it's a nice little discard outlet if you ever find a turn to kind of use it. Okay, so here is the 2-drop Aurora that we mentioned earlier. So just simply 2-drop, named Aurora, 2/2 and 2 lore points, which is actually very relevant. There's not many 2-drops that do have 2 lore points. But yeah, like I say, she's purely in the deck just to shift up to the 5-drop Aurora. You can play this on turn 2 as well, and use it to sing a jump ahead the next turn. I don't recommend doing this against Steel though, because if your opponent has Fire the Cannons and gets rid of it, you're going to set yourself a turn behind. Okay, the next thing is Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger. We are running 4 copies of Fire the Cannons, hence why we play this card too. But we are only running 2 copies of it. The main reason for this is if you do not draw the cannons, this card is a dead draw. It feels really bad to play it onto your board as a free fall with no effect. But 2 copies is generally fine. It means that we see the cannons before we see this card. If not, we can always discard it with either Simba, which we haven't seen yet, or with the 3-drop Tinkerbell that we have seen. But it's nice to kind of recur your removal. If you're playing Fire the Cannons, you should be playing some number of this card. Okay, next is Mickey Mouse Detective. So when you play this character, you may put the top card of your deck into its inkwell face down and exerted. So generally you follow this up from one jump ahead and then play this on the next turn to then ramp yourself up. You can then manually ink and then you take yourself to 5 ink. So it's very useful to use. Together with one jump ahead, it makes the ramp package. Its stats aren't anything interesting to write home about, but you do play it just to kind of get to your bigger cards faster. Okay. Then we run 2 copies of Beast Hard-Headed. When you play this character, you may banish chosen item. So there is a lot of items currently around. A lot of it is Beast's Mirror, which we'll kind of cover in a little bit. But your opponent can be playing different things as well. So like White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, Coconut Basket, Lantern, anything like that. It's just nice to have. If your opponent isn't playing items, you can then just use it as ink. Worst case scenario, it's a 5-drop 4/4 with 2 lore points. So it's worth playing a couple of copies of. That means you're ready for any kind of matchup. Okay, so here's Simba, 1-drop. It's got the ability when you play this character, you may draw and discard a card. So its stats aren't wonderful. It's not generally going to be winning any fights against many things, but it's just there so you can get rid of all your uninkable cards. And sometimes you just need to draw into some of your more combo pieces or your ramp cards, so you play this on turn 1 and hopefully you get to see them. But like I say, it's generally just to kind of sort out your hand so you haven't got loads of uninkable things in it. And finally is Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. So this has been the flavour of the last week or so. It has the ability to shift 4. You may pay 4 ink on top of one of your characters named Tinkerbell. So remember, we played the 3-drop Tinkerbell. When you play this character, deal 1 damage to each opposing character. And then during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may deal 2 damage to chosen opposing character. So if you do shift onto the 3-drop Tinkerbell, remember that this card can attack the turn it comes in. So you could do 1 damage to all of your opponent's characters, then attack with something, deal 2 more damage to something, as well as beating another character in a challenge. This also works with the Grab Your Sword song. So this is a very important play. When you shift onto this character on turn 4 and do 1 damage to all of your opponent's stuff, you can then use the song Grab Your Sword to exert Tinkerbell and do 2 damage to everything on their board. So you can have a 3 damage AoE ability and completely board wipe them. It's very likely to board wipe them because you're only on turn 4, but very, very useful to have, especially as you can do it that early as well. Okay, so that's all the characters, so we'll go on to the action cards. So yep, 4 copies of Fire the Cannons, deal 2 damage to chosen character. So get rid of something on your opponent's side that's small, finish off one of your opponent's big characters. You can recur it with the 4-drop hook. It's just very, very solid removal. You can also discard it with the 1-drop Simba and then pick it up with the 4-drop hook on turn 4. So it's just like, a nice cheap removal card that you can use. Very versatile. Very much play 4 copies. And then 4 copies of Smash, so deal 3 damage to chosen character. Same kind of reasoning as Fire the Cannons, but this one is inkable. So if you do see it early and you don't want to use it, just ink it and then use it to play your other cards. But it's just nice to kind of have, so you don't have to fight your opponent's characters to get rid of them. There's a lot of annoying things that are free health, so it is worth still playing. Okay, and that brings us on to the song cards. So 4 copies of Let It Go. A character of cost 5 or more can sing this song for free. Put chosen character into their player's inkwell face down and exerted. Because we play both the Shift Aurora and the Shift Tinkerbell, we can do this as early as turn 3. So if your opponent is using Rockstar Stitch and they've got a really good opening hand and they play their Rockstar Stitch as early as turn 3, which is possible, you can use Let It Go and get rid of it straight away, and then your opponent is then kind of stuck for what to do. But it's generally to use on your opponent's big characters, so you're not wasting resources on them or you can't attack over them. It's just very nice to kind of use, even if you hard cast it and just pay the 5. It's just very, very useful, and the fact is they can't keep recurring the things from the discard as well, because it's now in their inkwell. They can't get it back. It's worth mentioning before I move on to the next card, if you do use this on a shifted character, they do get both the card underneath and the card on top into the inkwell, so you do ramp them by 2 ink. So just bear that in mind. Next thing is 4 copies of 1 Jump Ahead. So a character with cost 2 or more can sing this song for free. Put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. So very nice. Play this on turn 2, ramp yourself up to 3 ink, so you can then play the Mickey Mouse Detective. Not so great when you draw it late game, but it doesn't really matter because we have got a few cards that can make use of the extra ink. But you generally want to play Aurora on turn 2 if you're not getting Steel, like I mentioned earlier, and then use it to sing this card, and then play the Mickey Mouse Detective. It's a very good way to build up your ink nice and fast. But yeah, this is the cheapest ramp card that exists in the game. Very, very good. Okay, and then the last thing is Grab Your Sword. So a character with cost 5 or more can sing this song for free. Deal 2 damage to each opposing character. So it is a 5 cost and it's uninkable, so we have to bear that in mind. But because we can get to our 5 cost characters very quickly in this deck, like I say, as early as turn 3, we play 4 copies. Because we've got lots and lots of big characters, we can generally not deal with a very wide board, so we have to play stuff like this to kind of even up that. Because we're generally only playing 1 big character a turn, whereas they can play, you know, any amount of small little characters, and you're going to have a hard time challenging them all. So we use 4 copies of Grab Your Sword together with Tinkerbell, just to keep your opponents kind of all of their small characters in check. Okay, so that's the songs. So last thing is Beast's Mirror. So it's a 2 cost item, has the ability Show Me. So you can exert this card, pay 3 ink. If you've got no cards in your hand, draw a card. So this is the card to utilise all that spare ink that you get. So while you're building up all your ink and using all your ramp cards, you'll get to a point in the game where you're going to run out of cards. This is what keeps you in the game. Generally, it's what your opponent is going to try to remove with their kind of copy of Beast Hard-Headed. So you need to be aware of that as well, but also you need to get rid of your opponents if they play it, because you will generally lose the game because they're just out attritioning you because they're drawing cards and you're not. So it's very important, especially in the late game and long drawn out games, etc, etc. Okay, so that is the deck as a whole. Please give it a go. It is a lot of fun. It's very well placed in the meta at the moment, like I say, because you can get rid of all of your opponent's small characters, especially if they're playing Rockstar Stitch. But it deals with any aggro decks as well. It has a decent matchup against Evasive, and also the mirror match is 50-50 as well, because you can deal with it and you've got tricks to deal with their stuff, they've got tricks to deal with your stuff. But overall, it's very well suited in the meta at the moment, and we've got lots more steel and blue cards to come along as well, so we can make this deck even stronger. Right, that's it for today, guys. I'll see you later.